Hi, everyone. This is Matt Murphy from WoodenBoat magazine, and I'm going to be joined today by Reuben Smith of Tumblehome Boat Works. But we are having a little technical difficulty. We had everything all sorted out a few minutes ago, but both of our Wi-Fi connections are inexplicably slow today, so we're on our mobile hotspots. And right before the beginning of the broadcast, I had a good connection with Reuben, but I seem to have lost him in the meantime. So if you could bear with us for just a few minutes, we will get this sorted out. Um, and in the meantime, I'm going to put up a pretty picture of a boat. Uh, Bear with me for one moment. This is a, a boat that lives in Reuben's showroom, the Gold Cup racer El Legato. And here she is. And I will be right back while Reuben and I get this sorted out.
Try mine.
Oh,
Is it Reuben or you?
um, I don't think so. Hi again, everyone. I am going to restart this broadcast and see if that does it. When in doubt, um, turn it off and turn it back on again. That's what I always say. So thank you for bearing with us. I see that everyone is patiently waiting, and we're even adding a few people. So this has worked before. I'll be right back. This broadcast will disappear, and I believe it will reopen in a new post on Facebook. Thanks. We'll see you in a few minutes. There we go. Hello, Reuben.
Hi, Matt.
I don't know how we pulled that off. A boat builder and a magazine editor. There's a joke somewhere.
That's
Well, the
right.
good news is our loyal audience has hung in there during all
Oh,
of
thank
it.
you guys. Sorry about the delay. Hopefully,
And if I can see Jim Reineck and Alan Houghton have already chimed in comments. Alan is in New Zealand, and Jim we all know from Reineck Blocks. Thank you for being here.
we'll be featuring some of Jim's work as we go around the shop.
Oh, great. Can't wait. Please, would you folks in the audience just chime in the comments and let us know that this connection is working well. And in the meantime, we'll get on with the interview. Reuben, you are located in Warrensburg, New York, in the Southern Adirondacks. And your shop is Tumblehome Boatshop. And for many years, I thought of your shop as a purely powerboat shop, but you have done some significant sailboat restorations. Thank you, Alan. All good in New Zealand. You've done some significant sailboat restorations, and but how? What was your path to this shop? You began out on the coast, if I recall.
Well, it began here, actually. The path was circuitous, but my father and uncle, Mason and Everett Smith, started building boats in the mid 70s in the North Country here in St. Regis Falls, New York. And they were, maybe they won't like me saying this, but they were sort of part of the back to the land movement of the 70s. And they started building Rushton knockoffs. And it was a very different time because no one had done that in a long time. They really were starting from whole cloth. And I ended up working with them through high school and college, and it got to the point where being a boatbuilder was really the last thing I wanted to do. And so, but finally, I returned to it in the '90s. And I did move out to the coast. I worked with the Hull Lifesaving Museum and the famous Snow Row, and Ed McCabe and Laurie Newmeyer, Corrine Leong, my friends out there. And then I started Tumblehome Boatshop in Kingston, Massachusetts, in the back of a box truck. And I would go around kind of working from yard to yard and doing repairs on boats out on the coast, which was really quite of a nice change for me. It really was almost like a second college education, if you will, because I was working on a very different kind of boat, not Adirondack guideboats and skiffs and lake boats, but instead working on auxiliary sailboats and things like that. So,
And how would you characterize that difference between the types?
well, the scantlings obviously are very different. Just moving stuff around, a pretty different activity. The penalties for failure on the coast are much higher than on a lake, so you really need to be doing things just right. But I think that my experience working with my father and uncle, they were very precise, very careful, very thoughtful builders, and that attitude lent itself well to learning how to work on saltwater boats on the coast. And then when I came back here to work back in the North Country, by that time I had a fair amount of experience and really had to come back and learn again a bunch of new stuff to do what I'm doing now. So I've been building boats since 1981, just a few years of boats. And I've worked on a lot of different. My strong suit is I've worked on a lot of different types of boats, but my short suit is I haven't focused on anything, any one thing particularly, but it keeps me interested.
And we'll see some of that diversity in the shop tour today. Our plan is to do a brief discussion here and then take a walk around the shop and see what's going on the floor. But some of your recent highlight projects include, well, the Achilles, which we began the broadcast with. If you could tell us a little about her, and I will ferret out the other image of her in the meantime.
Yeah, Achilles is a 1926 Fay and Bowen junior runabout, and this was Fay and Bowen was a New York builder. They built on Seneca Lake in Geneva, New York, and they were kind of the first powerboat class, if you will, or production powerboat company for the lakes. And they, pretty prolific company. They started in 1903, and they went out of business in 1929 before the stock market crash. They died of their own accord. Just very conservative company, but they're beautiful boats, and they're interesting boats, and just enough of them have hung around to be rebuilt in this area. So Achilles was a boat that we got that, sort of looked presentable, looked like a pretty good boat, but we ended up having to reframe the boat entirely. We knew that going in, but so she's structurally all new, but the skin of the boat, the planking and decking, the stuff you see is almost all the original wood.
It is. Wow. And it's
all of it. Yeah.
Wow. And what condition was that in when it came to you? I mean, I've heard the term in the runabout world, gray boat restoration, which usually means that everything is shot. But was there peeling varnish on this, preserving that wood?
Yeah, though
And
these boats live charmed lives. They live in boathouses. They're hardly ever out. And this boat had been in the boathouse, I think, its whole life. But like I said, every frame was broken. And some of the bottom planking, we put a heat gun on some of the bottom planking, and oil just ran out of it. It was so oil soaked from leaky old engines. So she was not in usable condition at all. We also found the correct model motor that was sitting in the woods for 20 years, but it wasn't in bad shape. We were able to rebuild that engine.
Wow, it just happened to be the correct model motor that would have been in the original stock product.
That's right.
But what is it? What is that motor?
Well, Fay and Bowen was an engine company first and foremost.
Oh, they built engines.
Building engines, and they ended up building boats as a vehicle to sell their engines. so all the original boats will have, except for very few, would have the original Fay and Bowen engine. Would have a Fay and Bowen engine originally, I should say.
Wow. Where does one find parts for a Fay and Bowen engine?
Yeah.
Is it all? Are you building them? I mean, what do you do if you need a piston for one of these engines?
Well,
or even rings.
Yeah, no, those are commonly made. So that's always a big debate as to how to make the pistons, how to size them. Luckily we have there's some people doing these engines who are just so good. Bob Mishko, a guy in Tennessee, was one to help me understand what these pistons had to be. And so this engine does have a modern piston. But one of the interesting things, for instance, with this boat was the timing gears are made of micarta, which is linen impregnated with resorcinol. And
really?
That was to make them run quietly. It predates the timing chain. So the engine would run quieter with this fabric gear. And we had to learn a lot about how to make a fabric gear. And I found a 1917 article in the Society of Automotive Engineers journal that discussed in detail how to cut the teeth, how to orient the micarta, and exactly how to make this gear. And so I had a gear maker nearby, and we went to him, and the cutting angles for his tooling, everything was all there in this article. It was magic. And so that's how we've solved problems like this with these engines. It's just find some incredibly skilled craftsperson to make the part we need. And often the engines might have 30 different subcontractors that, I had to do a head on one boat recently. It was 4 different people that had to take the head to get it done. One to test it, one to make the gasket, one to stitch it. That was an elegant job.
To stitch the gasket.
Yeah, they do iron stitching rather than weld this old iron. There's a fellow in Worcester area who will actually do these beautiful little stitchings to repair. It's a cold repair, very strong, very stable, very good repair. So it's people like that make it possible.
So it's quite a constellation of experts in your world.
That's right. I'm sure it is on the coast too. Everyone's relying on little mom and pop shops all over the place to get anything great done.
Now here's a 1928 Baby Gar. What level of restoration did she receive with you?
That boat had a new bottom put on by the Turcottes, who own the Garwood brand, and they're colleagues of ours. They're right nearby here. And so the year before my customer bought the boat, they had rebuilt the bottom, but it was a little bit of a budget job, and they hadn't had the budget to do everything else the boat needed. So we could have did another 800 hours or so worth of work on blanking on the sides and refinishing. And now that engine we're working on that engine too.
And is that
original
original? Yeah.
That is the original motor. It's a Scripps 202. And it sounds like a drag car.
And as I'm
bangs and pops and carries on like crazy. It's a monster of an engine.
Yeah. And just to locate us, I mean, your principal waterway is Lake George. Most of your customers are on Lake George. Is that correct?
Yeah, but we're regional. The Adirondacks are full of small lakes, so boats like this are common. Not common, but they're throughout the park here.
Yeah. Now, an interesting connection with the coast, and as I mentioned earlier, you have done some significant sailboat restorations in recent years, and this is a Long Island Sound Interclub, and a boat, as you know, that is near and dear to my heart. I had one for several years, and but I didn't know the history of these until you contacted me one day and told me that they had a deep history on Lake George after they left Long Island Sound. And
Right.
and you had one customer, John Kelly, who developed a deep passion for these. And please take it from there.
That's right. Yeah, we had restored a little Garwood utility for John, and he was researching that boat. It's a 1936 Garwood utility that hopefully we can see next door if the technology allows us. But he researched that owner and came across a picture of a Sound Interclub on Lake George that was owned by this fellow back in the 40s, and he said, "What is that?" I just happened to know it was a Sound Interclub, and I said I knew where there was one for sale, and of course that meant yours, man. So we ended up restoring your boat, Caprice, first, and that was key because you and people before you had done a good job of stewarding that boat. The others that we've restored have been real basket cases, but Caprice was pretty intact. And so we were able to do a thorough restoration. So basically, it was a deep job.
And
They're structurally all new, but
yeah,
we kept
and
making as possible. Yeah,
you
there
have
you
some
can.
photos here showing just how deep it was. I mean, this and clearly the boat needed this. I nursed it along for years, but you took it apart.
This
And
is
you went
this
through,
is not
I recall you called it a
Caprice.
truthing process. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, this is
With
Eileen.
Eileen, which was Cornelius Shields' boat.
That's right.
Cornelius Shields, the great Long Island Sound yachtsman, whose father was a member of this fleet, and Corny Jr. Is still in the New York area. And this boat belonged to his family, and I recall seeing it years ago. And you stripped it back to this state. Uh, tell us about you developed a program called True Sound. Reuben, did you catch that? You froze up for a moment, but I see motion again.
Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit for me too.
Okay. But I was asking you about the job of truthing these plans and correcting them because you didn't have lines and you weren't clear that the Caprice's shape was accurate when you got her. She was 80 years old.
Yeah, she was pretty distorted, and without a proper lines plan to reproduce the boat was a challenge. So we call it our true process, and we apply to really all the deep restorations we do to study the boat as closely as possible and figure out what the shape of the hull was originally and what the structure, how it was meant to work originally. And so that was basically the process, and it's relying on sonde shapes. We did a lot with photographs. We had, I think, 190 or so Rosenfeld images, the glass plate negatives, and we had the resolution with those to scale in and pick up dimensions and pick up shapes to come up with a boat that we believe is as it was. And of course, when those boats were built, the designer, that was just an iteration. The lofting process was yet another phase in design effectively. So there are some details to the shape of the hull that were clearly in the boat, but not in the drawing. So there's some evolution.
Well, I remember visiting you after you restored two boats simultaneously, Caprice and Ghost, for
Right.
John. And I had seen Ghost while I owned Caprice. She was shrink wrapped in a yard in Rhode Island, being preserved, but was clearly run down. I believe she'd been fiberglassed and was close to a basket case. And when I saw those boats, when I visited Lake George after you'd finished them, I could hardly tell them apart, which was quite a testament to the job you did on them.
Well, thanks, Matt. We have an amazing.
Or it's quite a testament to my inability to tell boats apart.
I always tell John there's an 1/8 inch difference in the shear line of both boats. And I have to point out where it is.
You've done new construction too, Reuben. This is the Tumblehome 24, designed by by Bob Stevens and Paul Waring of Belfast, Maine. And well, you tell us about it, please.
Yeah, this was really a collaboration with the owner and Bob and Paul and myself to come up with that shape. And basically, the concept was the owner wanted the classic looking speedboat, but he wanted to do a few different things well. He wanted it to run quietly and easily, but then also go real fast. So we took the essential form, queuing off boats like El Lagarto, and but it's sort of like a spirited tradition thing, I suppose, where it's made it to a very modern, almost monohedron bottom. So it's got the same sort of bottom you might find on a Cobalt. It's really nothing new. Ray Hunt and Lindsay Lord developed this concept long ago, but it's pretty new for boats like this to have that sort of a bottom. So you can see that continuous dead rise all the way aft when she's in frame there, and she's cold molded.
She is, yeah. And we may see her on this tour today. Is that?
I hope so, Matt. But like I say, I don't know if our technology is going to let us do it. So.
Right. Yeah. Well, we shall see. And we have a few more images here. I would like to show this one of Fen. I need to hide a few things first. And this is Fanita.
Right.
And this is the whole boat. And is this one of your engine restorations?
Well, yeah, that was actually done by that engine was done by a friend of mine, Dave Dunbar. We're doing them now ourselves. Dave is more or less retired, but that is a Fanboy engine, and so Fanita's a 32.5-foot torpedo stern, and she originally would have had a T-head engine in her, but this is another Fanboy engine that has the same characteristics as the original engine. So it's a big displacement engine that runs very slowly. The red line is 1,000 RPM, and so it idles 350. But in that picture, the boat is running at 14 knots, which is remarkable for a semi-displacement hull. But also, it's just incredibly efficient. We filled the gas, the fuel tank one time and ran about at that speed for at least 20 hours. So it gets very good economy. And that is a testament to that hull form and that slow turning propeller. It's just a very efficient pairing. And it's also very quiet. Really a fun boat to be in.
Nice. Well, Reuben, I just received word from the control booth that your walkabout device is working. And I wonder if we should take advantage of that at this point and show us your shop, which I want to preface this by saying that this is probably the cleanest shop, if not one of the cleanest shops I've ever been in my life. There's a washing machine and a dryer in it, for example. And I don't think I know that's not an affectation. I mean, cleanliness is so important to this kind of work, this kind of craftsmanship. And it's a 6,000 square foot facility. And you've got several projects on the floor there. And so Reuben is now going to log off of the desktop device he's on and pick up his phone and give us a little tour of the shop.
Can you hear me, Matt?
I sure can. Great.
Okay, I can hear you now.
Excellent. And I'm in the process of hiding your base image. There we go. Okay, so you are up on the. You just exited the a conference room in your shop that overlooks this shop floor. And what are we looking at here, please?
Yeah, we're just looking out over the shop. I thought I would just kind of pan through to see the boats that are in the shop, and then we'd go down on the floor and talk some more about them. So this is a boat that we're estimating right now. It's a mid-30s Chris Craft utility. And then one of the boats we'll discuss in some detail is um, this Torpedo Stern. I can't. It's so long I can't get the whole thing in the picture at one shot. But it's a really wonderful boat. It's a 1903 H.J. Layton speed launch, and H.J. Layton won the second and third Gold Cups that were the famous early races. And so really quite a piece. It's the last one. It's the last one of Layton's boats. And we'll talk about that when I get down there. And there's a Lake George rowboat in the background. This is a Sequoia, which is a 1926 30-foot fan Bowen that's gotten the true process, the full restoration going on. The boat with the colorful towels is another 1930s Chris Craft that's getting a new bottom. And we're just keeping the wood soaked up while we wait to fasten the outer planks. We have an interclub mast. We have an interclub ghost. And then this is our spray booth. It's this tent. This tent it's collapsible. It will extend all the way to near where I am. It can be 50 feet long, but it's a full spray booth. So I'll walk downstairs. Can you hear me okay?
Great. Well, thank you for that overview. I sure can. Yeah, you. Yeah, this is great. The mobile device is a little jumpy, but well worth it.
This will interest the other boat builders in the mix, but we got this mahogany in just recently. They're actually in flitches. We were able to buy a whole mahogany log. So this is the 25-foot perfectly clear piece of Honduran mahogany, the likes of which I haven't seen in a long, long time. That's very exciting to me. It's the most exciting thing in here to me. This is an Old Town square stern canoe in the finishing booth. Pretty hazy through the plastic.
Yeah, but the view is good. Thank you.
So this Chris Craft here, this is the inner layer is laid out on a bias, and it's very thin, only about 1/8 inch thick.
And have you removed the outer? Or is this a new layer of planking, Reuben?
Yeah, this is all new. So this is the new outer planks. They've been fit, and the undersides are painted, and now we're ready to put the two layers together.
And will those be glued with epoxy, or what's your?
No, we're doing a traditional bottom. So this is going to have the bedding compound and fabric layer in between the two layers.
I see.
So, and for a boat that lives in the water, it's really a nice way to go. It's very contentious in the runabout world, that claim, but that's. So this is this boat is Achilles and Fanita both got the same process that this boat's getting. So basically, we restored the shape. There's Sean O'Neill, Matt.
Hey, Sean.
And then I don't know if you can see, it's all new frames, all new bent frames inside, a new keel. Probably hard to see very well. The deck has been rebuilt pretty substantially.
Hey, Reuben, tell us about your staining process on these hulls. I mean, I'm sure that this will look entirely uniform, but I see some old planking and new planking here. And how will you blend that for a bright finish?
Yeah, it's something we're working on quite a bit right now, but we will have to do some blending so that these boats would get a mahogany filler stain under the varnish. And what we'll have to do is the original wood, like the forebody of this boat is basically all original wood. It's not been faired, so it'll be a little lighter yet. But then you can see different species here where different colors. they'll become much more uniform than they look now once they're stained, but we may likely have to do some pre-staining techniques to get the wood to all look the same. And so right now we're working on what's going to be our baseline color. And then once we find that, we have lots of pieces laid out, and we'll just try different staining techniques. So we might pre-stain with a mint wax or an aniline dye, use different colors of filler stain, whatever we can think of to make it all work out.
Uh-huh.
So that's one of the really fussy parts of doing these boats.
And what's the timeline on a restoration like this? When will this boat likely see the water again?
Too. So we
Uh-huh.
stopped on it for almost 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
But it's it's several thousand hours to do a boat like this in the way we're doing it, and we have the correct model engine too, another Fanboy engine that's being rebuilt.
Mm.
So moving on to this really incredible Torpedo Stern 1903. This is the stern of this boat. It's just so extreme looking, and you can see these torpedoes who really were, very shallow aft underneath. It's almost like this part of the hull is cantilevered out over the water, and the weight of the boat is all forward. The trim of the motor and the fuel tank were all forward, and so there's also a fair amount of, perhaps you can see some recurve in the bottom.
Yeah. Where does the shaft exit the hull?
It's about 10 feet. Perhaps you can see it. I'm crawling on the floor now. I don't know if you can see the slot. There's a long slot in the keel.
Yes.
And that's
yeah, we have a good view of that.
There's the
Thanks.
strut. So the shaft in this boat is probably about 15 feet long. So H.J. Layton was really a race boat build. This was a radical monster. Probably not a, probably as nice as the jet ski is today to the people on the lake in 1903.
Was it meant for racing or for
Well, he would call it a speed launch.
joyriding?
Yeah, it was for joyriding. It was sort of a hot rod boat. So this boat ran 18 miles an hour. It's a 30-foot boat that ran 18 miles an hour in 1903. And it had a multi-cylinder 2-cycle engine. And the engine ran at 600 RPM only. So the throttling and engine speed was controlled by a variable pitch propeller. Again, another patent by Layton.
Reuben, give us some context on that 18 miles an hour. What was the record then in 1903?
The record, Layton actually held the speed record for a boat that was called Adios. It's about 45 feet long, but basically the same shape as this boat. And I think it was about 30 miles an hour. I don't remember exactly what it was. So the only motor today that has the kind of characteristics of that original 2-cycle motor, the really high torque, low RPM motor, is electric. And so this is a motor we're putting in for the repower. So where it had a state-of-the-art motor in 1903, it's getting a state-of-the-art motor in 2020. And this is almost a prototype from a company called Transfluid in Italy.
What's the battery bank?
Yeah, it's a Lithionics battery bank. We're working on that install right now. So these are the batteries. And believe it or not, the weight of this motor and these batteries is the same as the original engine. So we're actually right in the right ballpark with the weight of everything. And this motor, the current is 51 volts and 425 amps to run at full speed, which if you think of it is almost like taking your car battery and dropping a wrench across the terminals and leaving it on there for 20 minutes. So it's just a huge amount of current. Big cables, 4-aught cables, and a big reduction gear too. So this will run the shaft speed of around 700 RPM at 18 miles an hour.
And that was the original RPM of the.
That's right.
The original engine. Yeah.
We're actually a little bit higher than the original RPM. So a big propeller. But again, I think it's going to be quite surprising. I think it'll surprise a lot of people how efficient this boat is and how nice it is to be in with the original propeller. Well, shall we wander next door, Matt, to see if our connection holds up?
Yes, please. But I'm looking at that brass fitting before you leave this boat. Are we looking at a bilge pump here, a combination bilge pump?
Are you ready? It's
Okay,
a
I'll
little
start
loud.
guessing. Yeah, right. Okay,
It's a whistle.
yeah. Thank you.
I don't know if
I
that
have never
was
seen
original
it.
with the boat or not. The boat amazingly has been in one family since it was new in 1903. And this is the first time it's ever been off the body of water near Old Forge, New York, that she's been at since she was brought there by train in 1903.
And boathouse kept since then?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, she wasn't used for several decades, so like 30s to 70s. But pretty historic boat. This was another pretty challenging project. I can't see very well. But I was trying to show the inside of the stern. Maybe you can see the framing, but pretty difficult job to rebuild this torpedo stern. And then the stringers in the boat. This is kind of interesting. Is they're tapered and they're bowed, so they're 2 inches thick in the middle and 7/8 or so at the ends, and bowed about 6 inches across the length of the hull.
Mm.
Maybe you can see the perimeter of the seating, how it's bowed. But we wanted to keep all the original joinery. So to restore the shape of the hull, replace the stringers, and then have the seats fit back in was an interesting challenge. But we did get it done. So we should be launching this boat this summer. We're all really excited about this project.
Great. Well, we can't wait for a report.
All right, let's go next door.
Excellent. And Reuben, while we're walking next door, tell us a little about the grounds. I mentioned how. Hi, Cindy. May we have a quick glimpse of the office here, what the visitor encounters when they arrive.
This is the entry, the lobby. The old Sound Interclub pictures, old Roosevelt images.
Nice.
With permission from Mystic Seaport. I don't know if that office is quite ready for prime time by Cindy's measure. But... Okay, I'm outside.
All right, and if I recall, your outside grounds have won at least one local award for landscaping.
This is Cindy's doing. She had the vision for this, and she was right to make it look good.
And so Reuben, you are a regular exhibitor at the Wooden Boat Show in Mystic, and you truck a lot of these boats considerable distances to get to the show every year. Tell us a little about that process of getting from Warrensburg to Mystic every year. The Sound Interclubs, for example. How do you do that?
Well, this is one of the disadvantages of living away from where the action is in Maine or Massachusetts, where I was before, is there at that time that we got the boats done, there was no one with a trailer that could haul an interclub. So we ended up having to buy one ourselves. So we got a Brownell trailer and then subsequently modified it quite a bit to not only carry the interclubs, but carry the long, narrow hulls like Fanita or Indian. So this is our showroom. So I'll do a quick pan and we'll talk about these boats. But here's one of the early engines that we work on. This is a Fanboy T-head from about 1916. An interesting thing about this motor, this is hands-on operation. This is the oiler. And so each one of these oil lines is an individual piston pump, and it's up to you to adjust the drip rate for each bearing in the motor as you're running it. This is another Wisconsin T-head.
Are these motors operational?
This one is running, yeah. This engine here is running. This is a 37 Garwood that we refinished and did a bunch of work to last year. Let's see, that's the original Chrysler Ace motor. all these little details. It's, it's nice with these boats. There are people who make those wheels now, so you can get the correct wheel. If yours is all broken up, the gauge panels, there are people making that now. This is the Tumblehome 24 that we were talking about before. You can see that deep V bottom all the way at the stern there.
And is this how many new constructions have you done at the shop?
This is the only one, Matt.
This is the only one. Okay.
Yeah. We're kind of known for restorations, and so walk around. You can kind of see inside the boat here.
That cockpit. If we could linger on this passenger area for a moment, it's such a sensible layout. Your cousin Everett wrote, or Emmett wrote about this a little bit for us. The seating arrangement where people are facing each other, and it was a style of the boats that predated the runabouts that are configured like cars, and it's a much more social configuration, isn't it?
That's right. I worried about it quite a bit with this boat.
Because of trim?
This boat also goes really fast. So I would wonder what it would be like at 60 miles an hour sitting like that. But in the end, it's fine. It's actually quite comfortable. This is kind of funny. We have actuated hatches. Oh, I don't have a battery to do it. Never mind.
Okay, but explain to us what was going to happen there.
The hatches are on a button. They open automatically by these actuated rods. And then the aft deck opens up as well. There's a swim ladder under that deck. That one might open. I'm going to try it. Pardon me while I scramble over the side here. Yeah, there's not enough juice. Sorry.
Okay. Reuben, are those speakers under the seats?
You got it. Yeah, this boat's got all the trimmings. Yeah, this is a complicated boat. The actuators, the dead battery, are one of the things we deal with this setup a lot. It has a lot of demand on the systems. At one point, I told this owner, you can have an engine, you can have a fuel system, and a muffler, pick two, because I wasn't able to fit everything in. Obviously, we didn't.
How did that sort out?
Well, the compromise was that he couldn't have two exhaust pipes. He only could have one exhaust pipe coming out the transom. Here's a Rushton Saranac Lake, or an Adirondack guideboat.
A classic guideboat.
Yeah, really. This is an 1890s boat. If my father's watching, he'll be annoyed that I don't have the exact rate. My father restored this boat several years ago. Really pretty boat. That's not the right middle seat either. So now we'll go into the back area.
Your father, of course, is Mason Smith. I'm not sure we mentioned his name earlier. Has written for WoodenBoat on numerous occasions and been written about in WoodenBoat. That's
right. A couple of interesting older boats here. This is a guideboat built canoe. So you can see the typical guideboat sawn frames, but here with an incredible amount of curve to them. And then the all grown forms. Maybe you can see the grain of that stem knee, how much shape that has.
Sure. Yeah.
And it looks like the traditional guideboat smooth skin lap straight, but it's actually not. It's actually, you kind of see it's two skins. It's double planked, but only 1/8 inch thick or so planking. This is underneath is a Lake George rowboat. That if you read the W.P. Stevens book on where he discusses how Whitehalls were built, this is built identically in the same manner. So,
in a similar form to a Whitehall?
Yeah, very much. Yeah, very much. A transom. We can quite take in the whole boat, but it's a transom and it's kind of a low, narrow boat, but clearly a development off of Whitehall. William Inglis Peterborough sailing canoe. What a nice boat.
In the Lake George rowboat, that's a recreational boat, I assume. And
they were livery boats.
Oh, okay. So they did work. Yeah.
The Cindy's motorcycle. So just trying to focus on everything here, but here's a little pan of this space here.
These are number boats, are they not?
That is a number boat, number 19. That's an original 1910 number boat that was, yeah, Emmett wrote about in WoodenBoat a few years back. And that's
You did, and
sorry, go ahead.
yes, go ahead. Sorry, Reuben. Continue.
It's a Charles Mower design, same as the Sound Interclubs. There's Caprice right there, and there's Eileen going in the water next week. And the rigs are overhead. But yeah, it's interesting. It's the same designer as those boats, and it was really the first one design class of power boats. So same kind of design brief as the Interclub, meant to be a safe family boat, but also one that could be raced.
So one design, meaning the boats of the class are identical. There's no handicapping.
Yeah, same.
And they race boat for boat.
That's right. The best skipper wins.
Reuben, you have, this is quite a collection of museum quality boats here. And quite vulnerable to fluctuations in humidity and holding up quite well, I see. But what precautions do you take there with heat and humidity in this building?
In this building, we've been I have to say, we're just lucky because this building just stays very good. Right now, this building it's 88 degrees outside, but I think it's 77 in here, and in the RHs, there's Jake Greiner.
Hi, Jake.
The relative humidity is 70%. So in all winter, we just heat it to about 45 degrees, which is enough that we don't get condensate in the engines. And it stays at 65% all winter long. We struggle with it much more in the shop itself, but this building has been quite easy to work with.
Do you have a humidification system in the shop?
Not a good one, but it's something we're working on. Mm-hmm. We need to do something. I saw an Alex video. He had a nice little one of those humidifiers that would spray a mist.
Yes,
and that's
right.
what I'm looking at too.
Yeah, that's Alec Brainerd of Tumblehome. Oh, excuse me, you are Tumblehome Artisan Boat Works in Maine, who we interviewed a few weeks ago.
This is our parts room where all the pieces of the boats we're working on get stored, and that may not look organized, but it is pretty organized. And this is
it looks organized.
This is an engine that'll go in Sequoia, the fan Bowen that was on the shop floor, the 30-foot fan Bowen. So this is the lower end. Basically, I'm just going through everything to get it together. Here are these fabric gears I was telling you about.
Right. Wow.
Timing at the end. And this is, again, lots of people. There's a local guy that does these, does the Babbitts for us. The connecting rod in this engine is a foot long. It's a beast. But anyway, there's the engine torn down. There's the block over here. And the head is right there. No stitching on this one to show you, unfortunately. These are the kind of props too that these turn. So this is an 18 by 24 prop for a 45 horsepower motor.
And are these custom props?
I'm often able to find an old prop. No one else wants them, so I can get them. So
I see. Yeah.
There's Caprice.
Looking great.
She'll look better when she's floating. This is Fanita that we saw the picture of earlier. She'll go in the water later this summer. This again was a big, real deep restoration. And you notice that you're talking about colors earlier. My read on the history of these boats is that the early fan Bowens are a much lighter color. And this boat just had this natural gold hue. And so the original wood much of the wood you see is original. A lot of the hull flanking is new and all the framing is new. But again, we were able to save most of the skin of the boat. And it just had this lustrous kind of gold color to it that was impossible to reproduce with new wood. except with lots of pre-staining and careful working.
It's unusual. Is this a variety of mahogany?
It's Philippine mahogany. I think Philippine mahogany in the 1916 was very different from the Philippine that we get nowadays.
Right. Yeah.
Just gonna see if I can pop up here to lift a hatch. You can see the engine. There we go. So I guess we've seen this before. Sorry, we had a picture of this.
But we see it live now.
We see it live, yeah. So again, very slow turning. It's a big engine. It's almost 400 cubic inches, but very low power, and it's just so quiet running. It's got a big muffler. Very nice to be in. Did I just lose you, Matt?
You lost me, and then you came back immediately.
Well, that's a miracle.
It is, yeah. This whole thing is a miracle.
No kidding. A writer and a boat builder, wooden boat builder, who knew?
Right.
This is we saw the pictures earlier, so this is just a reprise of this boat. And there's this Scripps. It's a 202, but it's got a 208 manifold. Someone's going to ding me on that. Someone's going to call in and say, that guy doesn't know what a 202 looks like.
Yeah,
I do. It's the right manifold, I know.
Actually, the comment section is lighting up here, but
This is really quite a motor. It's an inline six, 1928 engine, and it made about 250 horsepower and about 530 foot-pounds of torque in 1928. So they will push the boat at about 40 miles an hour.
wow. This was a complete restoration by you, complete structural restoration.
Well, we ended up kind of doing the
right, yeah,
structural stuff, and the Turcottes had done the real bottom restoration the year before.
What am I looking at there?
What's that?
What am I looking at in the middle of the bench seat?
Oh,
there?
well, here's fitting in modern with original. So in between the seats, we had this covered little walkway that we could hide a modern panel in. So the additional switching, nowadays we have a lot of protections on the engine. There's a blower. There's all kinds of features that you need to run an engine nowadays, run a boat nowadays, that was not present on the boat originally. So we had this modern panel, and we've been doing this with this is the Tumblehome original. We've been hardwiring these coil cords in for shore power.
Oh, okay.
So no one can carry a live cord into the boat, as you know that in freshwater, especially, shock hazards are a real danger. And so this has an ELCI panel, so it'll detect any minute ground faults, and it's just a very safe system. We've been putting these into almost all of our boats, these coil cords. It's the front end of the motor. This motor has been a real challenge. It uses so much fuel but at very low pressure. So to make it run correctly has been a real fight. we're getting there.
And what are the variables there? Is that the fuel pump or?
Yeah, it's just that it's one of those things that no one makes the right pump for this boat anymore. So luckily we were able to get some of the vendors and manufacturers to spec a system, a regulator and a system for us. There's another Sound Interclub, Matt.
Another one, and unrestored. Where do you keep finding these? Which one is this?
This is Susan, and she was a Lake George boat.
Mm-hmm.
And she was originally owned by the Mossbacher family, the famous Mossbacher sailors. Not the two sons who were so famous, but their dad. And he had two of them. And this boat doesn't have any hardware, but by some miracle, we have the hardware from the other boat, the other Mossbacher, which also was a Lake George boat.
And that was Bandit, do I recall?
That was Bandit, yeah. Another Save a Classic in wooden boat.
Right, yeah.
Here's another unrestored, really wonderful, really rare boat called the Niagara. This in 1913 was about as nice a boat as you could buy.
And what's the story with this boat? Oh, what are we looking at?
That's my
Humidity.
hygrometer right there.
Right. Okay.
66%.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, this boat went to Texas and from, we believe, northern New York. It was built in the Buffalo area and went to Texas and in the 50s, and the family that owned it was planning to restore the boat but never did. So we ended up unwrapping the hardware from the 1957 newspaper that they had put it in.
Yeah.
And we have it, it's all there. What's amazing about the boat, it's all there. It's pedal shifting. It's pretty unique. A fat boy steering wheel that hinges out of the way. And the engine, that Fanboy Engine I showed earlier is the one we took out of here just to get the weight out of the boat. That little opening in the bulkhead is so you can reach in and adjust those oilers.
Oh. And what is the plan for this boat, or is there one yet?
Well, it hasn't really been fully formed, but I certainly hope we do something with this boat that keeps it as original as possible, obviously. But I think the boat is just too wonderful not to use. This company would just advertise their customers back in the day, Rockefellers and Reeds and all these famous names. It's really quite a boat. The iron fastenings, the deck are all failed.
The hull is bronze fastened?
That's
copper?
right.
Yeah,
That's
bronze.
right. Yeah, typical, the same as Harrisoff and everybody else. Iron in the decks in these boats. Well, that's the lap of the shop, Matt.
Well, that was wonderful, Reuben. And before we sign off, can we? What's the little dinghy there? Before we?
Well, this is pretty cool. This is Dire Dink number 4.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Oh,
this was
history
in
right
this building when I bought the building. It's just total serendipity.
Oh.
In very nice shape.
Well, Reuben, if you wouldn't mind flipping your camera around and saying goodbye to our audience. Great. I was afraid I'd lost you there
I'm
for a
sweaty.
moment. Yeah. Well, that was wonderful. Thank you very much, Reuben, and best wishes for the summer and as we navigate this pandemic conditions.
Yeah, you too, Matt. Thanks so much for this. It's always nice to talk to you. And thanks
Thank
everyone
you.
for watching.
Thanks. And next week, by the way, Jan Adkins, author and illustrator for WoodenBoat, and more recently author and illustrator for our popular Getting Started series, will join us at the same day, same time, Wednesday at 3:30. Watch for an announcement on Facebook, and thank you. All right, great commissioning season, Reuben. Bye.
Thanks.